in her private courtyard. She looked to be over 30, yet carried herself with elegance, dressed in a flowing red dress to show off her great physique. She glared fiercely at the man in the suit who was kneeling before her. How did we get here? Well, just moments ago, she had just learned that her brother was dead. She gently placed the glass down as the man stammered through what had happened. He started from the beginning, telling her how Lian Jibei led Jidao Martial School to the tournament, and then was challenged afterward, ultimately killed by a man named Lu Sheng. What's even more terrifying was that there was no trace of his remains. The woman stood up abruptly, glaring at him with a sinister smile. She cursed at the man and said he was lying. She knew her brother's cowardly nature too well, the type of person who would never go up against someone his level, and often torture those who are much weaker than him, so there was no way he would have accepted a challenge from another grandmaster. The man hesitated, trembling as he explained that Lu Sheng, who had killed Grandmaster Lian, turned out to be a 6th-level martial artist. At this point, he could feel the temperature drop drastically around him. The glass cup the woman was holding now began to crack. She glared at the man in the suit once again, her eyelids twitching. She knew this was impossible. The more she heard this nonsense, the more she felt the man was deceiving her. The man's head drooped even lower as he hurriedly tried to calm her down and get her to listen to the full story. He explained that Lu Sheng was a 6th level. However, he managed to break through to the Grandmaster level during the fight. The woman then turned away, while laughing aloud, and she then threw the glass aside. Then she took a few steps forward, her laughter growing louder, her face buried in her hands as she kept laughing uncontrollably. How could my brother be killed by a 6th-level martial artist? She muttered to herself as tears streamed down her cheeks, smudging her meticulously applied makeup. With hands covering her face, she kept laughing while saying, "So he's an extraordinary martial prodigy." It's hard to tell how she felt, as her emotions were like a roller coaster, whether it was from grief over her brother's brutal death, or the thrill of killing a future martial prodigy. In one moment she was consumed with rage and grief, and in the next, she was calm and unperturbed. She kept her back turned to the man, her tone now much more pleasant. She tells him to please take a trip for her and kill Lu Sheng. However, the man's response left her disappointed. The man shook his head and explained that Grandmaster Lian had been killed on stage in a formal duel, where his strength had initially surpassed the challengers. This was the rules of the martial arts world, telling her that Grandmaster Lian had lost fair and square, and no one else could be blamed. The woman's expression changed abruptly as she descended into hysteria, turning around and grabbing the man's collar, shaking him violently. She screamed, questioning him if her brother died for nothing. The man dared not resist, as though this was all too familiar to him. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead, and he didn't say a word. The woman collapsed to the ground, catching sight of another message on her phone. This time, she laughed even more grotesquely, as if her world had turned upside down. Since no one would help her, she would find a way herself. Her eyes were cold and filled with murderous intent as she gripped her phone tightly and gazed into the distance. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng had returned once again to the old district of the capital. Meanwhile, in front of a school, many parents were picking up their kids. The children held their parents' hands, and some bounced around happily, occasionally laughing with their friends. Not far away stood an old man dressed in shabby clothes, hunched over with full gray hair. He stood staring blankly at the students, his gaze lingering on a red-haired girl with a high ponytail. She was the one laughing most joyfully among her friends. Seeing the girl reminded him of his daughter when she was her age. The group noticed the old man's gaze and he quickly averted his eyes as he didn't want to scare them. However, the children's laughter stopped, and they began to run away. One of them even said, "It's the crazy old man. Run before he catches us." The boy said this, then bumped into someone's leg, only to see a handsome young man smiling at them. They then apologized, took another look at the old man quickly, and ran off. Lu Sheng walked directly toward the old man and called him by name. The old man froze in place. In the next second, he heard a voice telling him that it was time to pay up. Lu Sheng then casually tossed a gym bag before the old man and told him to check if it contained what he wanted. The old man's face showed confusion, then perhaps at the thought of something as he gulped nervously and looked towards the bag. Lu Sheng tells him that people always say that you cannot insult a grandmaster, even when a grandmaster is dead. Thus he isn't able to bring the proof to the old man, however. He should be hearing the news in the coming days. The old man looked incredulously at Lu Sheng, then back at the bag. He crouched down and carefully unzipped it, revealing Lian Ye's head. Lu Sheng nonchalantly said, but at least he got something else for him. The old man stood stunned, while Lu Sheng pulled out the family photo that he had taken from him. He handed it over, and told the old man to make sure to keep it safe. Both of his hands trembled as he carefully took the photo from Lu Sheng's hand, and moments later, tears began rolling down his cheeks. Obviously, Lu Sheng had only been joking about asking for money. After handing over the photo, he walked away. The old man stood still for a moment before falling to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he repeatedly said, "Thank you, thank you." Lu Sheng didn't respond to him, rather just waved his hands. In the evening, Lu Sheng stood on the rooftop of a tall building, gazing at the sunset as he called Zhao on the phone. He informed Zhao that everything was taken care of. This caused Zhao to pause momentarily before speaking in a serious voice, urging Lu Sheng to return quickly, as he had already informed the principal, Martial Saint Tan Zhongyue. The Martial Saint had agreed to formally accept Lu Sheng as a disciple and promised to shield him from any pressure that might come from the Jidao Martial School. All Lu Sheng had to do was, before Zhao could finish, Lu Sheng interrupted. Holding the phone, Lu Sheng softly said he wasn't coming back. Zhao was stunned, unsure of what Lu Sheng meant. Instead of clarifying, Lu Sheng asked if Zhao was in his office, and then mentioned the large floor-to-ceiling window that allowed Zhao to see far into the distance. Zhao instinctively turned toward the window, peering out. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng was also looking in that direction, and it seemed like both their gazes converged on a single point, a towering colossal spire tower. There were 7 such towers in the capital, and each was located in one of the 7 divine martial universities. However, Zhao remained silent. Lu Sheng asked him if Zhao knew what he would do first when he became a martial saint. Perhaps talking to himself, at this moment, Lu Sheng seemed more calm and more serene than ever. He continued saying, when he becomes a martial saint, he will shatter all of the tower so that all may praise his real name. What followed was the end of the phone call. Zhao sat down in his chair, taking a deep breath. His tone was complicated as he tried to address the man before him. Lord Martial Saint, he said. The gentle elderly man not far from Zhao interrupted before Zhao could finish, telling him that if Lu Sheng didn't wish to return, then let it be. While stroking his beard, he tells Zhao not to harbor regrets, as everyone chooses their own path, even if Lu Sheng's path is different from theirs. The old man gazed out the window and chuckled, saying that although Lu Sheng's ambition seemed naive, perhaps even laughable, however, he hadn't encountered such an interesting martial arts youngster in many years. Zhao bowed to the elder, and finally mustered the courage to explain that Lu Sheng had only provoked Ji Dao because he took the mission for the university, and they knew too well that Lian Su wouldn't let it go. The old man's once calm demeanor shifted to unconcerned as he informed Zhao, this is Lu Sheng's own choice. He likely knows the consequences, and must bear them alone. After a brief silence, perhaps changing his mind, the elderly man turned around and told Zhao to send Huai Yu to protect Lu Sheng's family, thinking that with her there, Lu Sheng's family will be safe. Hearing this, Zhao bowed once again. Before leaving the room, the old man said emotionlessly, beyond that, there's no need to do anything else. Zhao exhaled deeply and respectfully escorted the martial saint out. Deep in his mind, he had done his utmost. Reflecting on Lu Sheng's earlier words, he let out a sigh once again. On the other side of town, Lu Sheng quietly stared at the divine martial tower. Did he not understand the consequences of offending one martial saint and then refusing another? Well, before entering 7th Divine University, he didn't even refuse a provincial governor who was already a grandmaster at the time. But this time, he chose to reject to become a disciple of the martial saint, one of the world's most powerful people on the planet. Being personally taught by a martial saint sounded promising, but it was not what Lu Sheng wanted. Everything he had done up to this point was for himself and his family. He can't play the superheroes on screen in real life, and changing the future is not easy. And in the end, He knew he was still too weak. His goal was to surpass the martial saint, to break the limits of what was once thought to be impossible, reach the realm of the 12th level, or maybe even higher, and possess the absolute strength to overcome all obstacles. Perhaps only then could he truly attempt to change the future. Meanwhile, during the night, after her bath, Lian-su put on her pajamas and looked at the brightly lit city in the distance. A burly man entered the room, asking if she had sent Zhuang Kui. With a smirk, Lian-su replied that 2 members of the Lian family had been killed. Her tone shifted as she called Lian Jibei a useless grandmaster. But Lian Ye had been the last direct descendant of their family, and now he was dead as well. She had to seek revenge. The man let out a sigh and calmly said that Lian Ye had many kids outside, and she should know this better than anyone. However, Lian-su didn't care. She was determined to send people to kill Lu Sheng. Her expression grew intense and twisted as she yelled that one was her brother, the other her nephew. No matter what they've done in the past, they're still family. Even though she was just a woman, she would do whatever she needed to avenge them. The man wasn't angered by her outburst, but remained calm, saying he wasn't blaming her. He tried to console her but seemed unsure of where to begin. However, he felt that Zhuang Kui alone might not be enough. Hearing this, Lian-su was shocked and hadn't expected Lu Sheng to be so powerful. Obviously, the man didn't know that Lu Sheng had already refused a martial saint's offer, or perhaps he never thought anyone would straight up refuse a martial saint. So he still believed Lu Sheng was a person valued by a martial saint and would be protected by Tan Zhongyu. Hearing this, Lian-su wrapped an arm around the man's neck, leaning her body forward and pressing against him, urgently pleading with him to send even stronger people to help her. The man placed a hand on her waist and drew her closer, smelling her hair while assuring her that he had sent 12 shadows to join Zhuang Kui, and this way, it should be more than enough. Lian-su's eyes brightened as she breathed a sigh of relief and smiled, looking affectionately at the man. She was happy to share that he still cared for her. Just as she was about to press her lips against his, the man pushed her away. He would help her, but he was furious that Lian-su had passed the Jidao secret scroll to Zhuang Kui without his permission. He walked away in disappointment, leaving Lian-su's expression to quickly turn cold. She shouted at him, saying she had no other way to have a strong martial artist to help except for that scroll, and besides that, the man hadn't given her anything. The man said nothing more disappointed than ever. At the doorway, his voice echoed one last time, warning her that he hoped there wouldn't be a next time. The woman slumped onto the bed, her face full of sarcasm, before suddenly erupting into a long, miserable laugh like a mad woman. The next morning, as a plane landed, a young woman wearing sunglasses large enough to cover half her face chewed gum and a headphone walking with her suitcase. She complained aloud, saying how she just finished her last mission, and why the rush. The next second, she was stunned, as she was told that a mere 19-year-old kid managed to kill a grandmaster. Looking at her phone's information on Lu Sheng, she was shocked, while saying this kid is way better than Yuzong ever was. Seems like another prodigy is joining their squad. However, the voice on the other end told her that Lu Sheng wouldn't be joining them as he had refused a martial saint. The girl thought she had misheard. Refusing a martial saint while killing Lian family members? Wait a second. This dude is a lunatic. Perhaps to her, this was the only word best describes Lu Sheng. She learned that the martial saint wanted her to protect Lu Sheng's family, and the people coming after them would be Zhuang Kui, one of the Jidao 28 stars, who was extremely close to being a high-level great grandmaster. Looking at the person's details, now she understood why she had been chosen. Since they are similar in strength and level, maybe this might just be her chance. By evening, the Lu household was brightly lit as the family prepared dinner. Lu Sheng walked through the door, greeted by his enthusiastic sister and then his parents. His mother, slightly annoyed, reminded him that he had said he'd be back around 1, but it was already evening. His father quickly pulled her aside and told her to stop nagging. He then took out some beer, intending to share a drink with his son. Lu Sheng casually tossed his backpack to his sister. Lu Qing was stunned and didn't react at first. Then, she pouted, saying, "But she's a girl." Lu Sheng chuckled and told her there was a gift inside, wondering if she doesn't want it. She finally agreed, and Lu Sheng affectionately ruffled her hair, immediately feeling his mood uplifted. She hugged the backpack and ran off, playfully commenting, "No wonder her brother can't find a girlfriend. He's too dense." Hearing this, their mother urged Lu Sheng it's about time for him to find a girlfriend, and not just fight all the time. Scratching at the back of his head, Lu Sheng quickly changed the topic. Before long, he sensed something and told his family that a friend had arrived, and he would be back soon. His mother only reminded him that the chicken wings would be ready in 15 minutes, and that he should return early. Gazing into the distance, Lu Sheng smiled and said, 15 minutes is enough. Stepping outside onto a narrow path, Lu Sheng expressed his gratitude to the person standing behind a tree for their help over the past couple of days. The man respectfully cupped his fists and said that it was simply his duty, and there was no need to thank him. He knew full well who stood before him, a teenage grandmaster who had killed a renowned veteran grandmaster. To him, Lu Sheng was like the high-level beasts he had first encountered on the battlefield years ago. Lu Sheng offered him a kind smile and asked him to convey his thanks to their superior, promising that his promise would soon be fulfilled to the general. The middle-aged man nodded, and in the next moment, his figure vanished. Suddenly, Lu Qing's voice called from behind, urging him to come back for dinner. Lu Sheng nodded and activated his perception. Instantly, his psychic energy spread across a radius of 250 kilometers, almost covering the entire city. But unfortunately, he couldn't detect any powerful presence tonight. He turned back and followed his sister home. A week passed quickly. Meanwhile, in a cafe, a young woman sipped her coffee while looking bored, wondering why the person from Jidao hadn't appeared yet after a whole week. Her patience was wearing thin. Meanwhile, a male customer across from her stood up and slowly exited the cafe, walking to a black sedan. The rear window rolled down, and the man reported that Huai Yu, ranked 13th in Mingyu Tang, was inside. Should they? His words were quickly interrupted by a man seated inside who chuckled, saying perhaps a week ago he might have worried, but now there's no need. The driver in the front quickly congratulated the man on reaching the great Grand Master level. The man laughed heartily and instructed the driver to head to Lu Sheng's home. Throughout the past week, Lu Sheng hadn't slept, instead using his psychic energy to constantly scan his surroundings for 24 hours a day to keep his family safe. Today, he finally sensed a powerful presence approaching. An 8th level great Grand Master. Oh man, things are getting more exciting, isn't it? It seems like our boy is about to fight his first great Grandmaster opponent. What do you think will happen next? Anyway, thank you for watching. A massive thank you to our first channel member and recent super chats. Thank you all for supporting the channel and see you in the next one.